Welcome to the Spirit Sisters podcast, where we explore encounters beyond our world. Through interviews and storytelling, we'll reconnect with wonder, awe, eternal love, and the possibility that something greater than ourselves is always telling a story through us. Together, we'll delve into the afterlife, spiritual awakenings, near-death experiences, the journey of the soul, other lifetimes, signs and wonders, and love more powerful than death. I'm Karina Machado, and my life's passion is investigating experiences that dwell in the threshold between life and what we call death, illuminating the great mystery and carrying profound wisdom for living. These days, more than ever, I'm certain these sacred stories contain the medicine for our times. Join us around the virtual hearth and draw close for a story that might just change your life. Spirit Sisters is recorded on Darawal country. My gratitude and respect to elders past, present and emerging. Hi everyone, welcome to the Spirit Sisters podcast. I'm so happy you're here with us today, and if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. We have such a wonderful guest today. I am so thrilled to introduce you to the visionary artist, Elli Milan. I am new to her work, and I feel so happy to have encountered her work. Elli is the founder of the Milan Art Institute, where she empowers artists to illuminate and impact the world through their art, which is an idea that's very close to my heart. And of course, as always with Spirit Sisters, there is a story behind Elli's understanding of her mission, behind her understanding of her identity as an artist as well, and her creative expression in this life, and her idea of what she's here to do. And that is all tied in with creativity and expression, and the idea that each of us is here with a purpose and a destiny, and that each of us matters and each of us is significant. This is a real deep dive, this conversation, into creativity and the healing power of creativity, and how we can get past the blocks that we impose on ourselves to our own creativity. So Elli had an extraordinary NDE when she was 15 years old that led her to all these awakenings. And there is so much of value here that I think you're going to absolutely love this conversation with Elli Milan. Please enjoy, and if you are enjoying Spirit Sisters, please share the podcast and subscribe, leave a comments, like and review on the podcast platforms. All of it helps the stories to reach the people they need to reach. So thanks again, and enjoy my conversation with the extraordinary Elli Milan. Hi, Elli. Welcome to the Spirit Sisters podcast.
Hello. So nice to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you, and I'm just so excited to welcome you on the show today. Before we pressed record, I was just sharing with you how much I've been loving your content on your YouTube channel and your newsletter, so we'll include those links in the show notes. And I'm sorry if you can hear my doggie barking. She's being a little bit naughty.
Oh, I can't hear anything. We have a huge thunderstorm going on, so hopefully the lights won't go out.
Hopefully, and it's the new moon, so I think that's a great time to record as well.
Yeah.
So, Elli, you are an artist whose paintings are imbued with the most sublime, otherworldly light. They're just so beautiful, and there's quite the story behind that light. And so I was wondering if you could begin by sharing your story about what happened on this day that you encountered this light.
Yeah, so I'm 53 years old, but when I was a teenager, I was 15, I was definitely one of those lost, kind of rotten teenagers. I was very rebellious. I was into sex, drugs, and rock and roll, just very, very off track. And I was out with some friends and I was out with my brother, and we kind of gathered at this park in this parking lot, and and everybody was older than me. I was the youngest one, so a lot of them were like 18, 19, 20, and my brother's older than me. And they had a bottle of 151 Bacardi, and I didn't know what that was. I mean, I knew what Bacardi was, but I didn't know such a high level of alcohol. I didn't understand that. And my brother left with some of his friends and they went to the nightclub, and so I was there with some other friends of ours, and they had this like funny gag of like this Ronald McDonald, like McDonald's restaurant cult, where they were like priests of this Ronald McDonald cult. And so they were doing this gag where everybody would lay back on the cars, and take communion. And all this to me, I see now as like this creepy, like interesting symbolism. But it was just kids playing around, and they were pouring the 151, and most of the people spit it out. But I was trying to be cool, so I was drinking it. And that's kind of like shortly after that, the last thing I remember. And I passed out and they all wanted to go on to the nightclub. So they locked me in the car. And when they ran into my brother in the nightclub, he was like, "Where's Ellie?" And they said, "Oh, she's still in the park. She's in the car. She's safe. She's sleeping it off. She's passed out." And my brother's like, "What do you mean she's passed out?" So he came back to the park, thankfully, and looked in the car, and he pinched my cheek and was kind of slapping me around to see if I'd wake up, and I didn't wake up. And then he pulled out my tongue, and it stayed out. And so he knew something was desperately wrong. So he called my parents, thank God, and they told him to get an ambulance right away. And or they called an ambulance. So then I went by ambulance to the hospital, and they pumped my stomach, charcoal, whatever, the whole thing, and I went into a coma. And so my mom, of course, was completely devastated, and they told her I would most likely not make it. And my blood alcohol level was 0.46, which is really, really high. And I'm 5'2", probably weighed 125 pounds. So anyway, she wasn't very religious at all, but because we have a Greek heritage, she reached out to a Greek Orthodox priest, because that was like all she knew to do. And so that priest came and to the hospital, and put like an icon under my pillow, and prayed with her. And so anyway, sometime the next afternoon, I think it was about 4:30 or so, the next day in the afternoon, um, I woke up, and the clock was the first thing I saw, and I was kind of sputtering because there was tubes in my nose. No, I don't know what it was, but I had tubes in my nose, and but I saw the clock, I saw what time it was, and I was trying to figure out where it was. And then my mom like jumped up and came over, and then the nurses, and they pulled the tubes out, and then I realized, okay, I was kind of tracing back what happened. And so I just felt super bad. And slowly my mom, she was crying, but she slowly was able to kind of tell me what happened. And then I was just really sick for the next couple days. Had severe alcohol poisoning, and and it wasn't until I got home from the hospital that I actually remembered this dream. And I honestly don't know when I had the dream, but it was sometime in the hospital, and I think it was when I was in a coma, but I'm not sure. And so I had this dream that I was in this like subway, like a subway station. And there was a subway, coming, like I could hear it coming from far away. And there was all this wind, and this wind was howling, and it was really dark and cold and smelly. And there was garbage blowing around, and there was like newspapers that were blowing against me. And I just kept hearing this train coming, or the subway coming, and the sound of it. And it was this frantic energy, or this super frantic, chaotic. And I wanted to run, but my legs were just glued to the ground, and I couldn't run, and couldn't move. And I wanted to get out of there. And the train was just getting louder and louder and faster and faster. And I just couldn't take it. It was screeching. And so I just like closed my eyes, and it felt like the train kind of went through me, or I don't know, like passed through me. And and then when I opened my eyes, I sort of was floating down the subway to the end, and there was this incredible light, and I was coming to the end, and I was like on the side of a cliff, and I looked out into over the side of the cliff, and maybe like, I don't know, 15, 20 feet down was just this incredible, beautiful, crystal clear water. And there was this mist over it, and this magical, like, light and glistening. And I just couldn't help myself. And I turned around and just fell back into the water, and it just washed over me. And the main thing, it was warm, but I just remember just feeling like perfection of love, just the ultimate love, like love I had never known. And just like pure acceptance. And and it's like your parents love you, you love your mom. But it's not the same. This was just a love, honestly, I'd never known in my life. Um and I knew it was something. Like when I remembered the dream, I knew that was God. That was something heavenly. It was something spiritual. And at that point, I had not believed in God. I wasn't uh, spiritual in any way. I wouldn't say I was an atheist, but I don't know. I didn't think about it. I was just a crazy teenager, just living life. But after that dream, I knew that I encountered God. I knew that that love was something non-human. It was more than human, beyond human. And so yeah, and it forever changed me, and it changed my mom too. She wasn't, religious at all at that point, or spiritual, or um I didn't grow up with it. We never talked about it. But after that, she and I both, had a completely different outlook.
Wow, that's an extraordinary story. Thank you so much for sharing it, Ellie. And as you're speaking, I mean, I am a student of near-death experiences. I've been listening to them, studying them for a very long time. One of my dearest friends is a near-death experiencer, and I feel really lucky to be able to learn from her when she shares elements of the experience. And what you share reminds me of so many of the others that I've heard in the power that this experience had to transform your life. So I also think of the love that you mention, and I can see as you talk about that love how it moves you still. So it's like this love that you remember is still a living force in your life today, and that seems to be a hallmark of the near-death experience as well. I wonder if, because there are so many elements that we can look at within your story, and I'd love to just perhaps unpack a few of them and look at how you reflect on them today as an artist as well as a woman, a human being. But one of the things that struck me is this idea of the power of surrender. So in your experience, you gave your back to the water and you let yourself fall back. I wonder what your thoughts are around this idea of surrender, and how when we do so, we perhaps meet a love that we might never have encountered, and by trusting. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that exactly, but now that you say that, I think that's super true. And it really wasn't like me. I think at that time I was extremely prideful and arrogant and super rude to my parents and like not soft in my heart, um, not the type of person you would think could do something like that. But I think the water was so inviting and so irresistible. It was like you couldn't do anything else. That was just the only thing one could do. And so, yeah, I can see that, and I can see that as a theme in my life. There's many times I have surrendered to that same thing. Um, you know, it's like when you get to the end of yourself and you've done it all, the best you can, and you try and and then you're just like, "Ugh, well, you know, if God doesn't do it, I guess it's not going to happen," kind of thing, and so I've been in that place. I remember when I had kids, I have four kids, but I had three at the time, and they were all little, and it's like nothing bad was happening in my life. I mean, financially we were okay. I had a house of my own. I mean, we're doing fine. There's no reason to kind of come to the end of yourself, but it just was like the daily, working, kids, trying to keep up your career, pouring juice, cleaning up messes, just and I think an overall um fear that I was going to mess up these girls. And like, just the incredible weight of responsibility of being a parent, and just feeling inept at that, and just like, who am I to raise these children, and I remember I was pushing one in the stroller, two in a stroller, and one was walking. Oh no, I had one as I was carrying as a, on me, one in a stroller and one walking. And I was just thinking about it, and I don't know, the weight of that just really got to me. And I had this like major moment of surrender. And I was just like, these are your kids. And like, this is too much for me. I'm just going to do what you say. And it was ultimate surrender, like surrendering my kids to God, and um, I didn't want the responsibility, of on my own, to do that. It's like, I'll be good to them, I'll feed them, I'll love them, I'll do all that, but I can't be responsible for how they turn out, sort of thing.
Mm.
Yeah. I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, and this idea of coming to the end of yourself, I think that's really powerful as well. And it's almost like the train. I wanted to talk, like, I'm just thinking about the train in your experience too and what it might symbolize as well. To me, it's like the noises of the world, it can be for talking personally as myself as a sensitive person, and there's this idea of being a highly sensitive person. I have the hallmarks for that, but I can sometimes find the noises of the world just too much for me. And when you're talking about that sort of torturous grinding sound of the subway, to me that sort of is like the world coming towards you, but then beyond that there's this love. Is that how
Yeah.
you see it as well? Like, I'm wondering how you interpret these elements in your dream experience.
Yeah, I've thought about it a bit, and I think it's like over the years it's changed a little bit in that, and like how I think of it. I think if I just put myself as to who I was at that time, that subway place felt like, um just like where you're out of control. You have no control over anything. I couldn't even move my legs, and everything was like filthy and gross and dark and just like the opposite of the light. It was just all things that, are bad or evil or yucky or whatever. And I was trapped in it, and I was stuck in it. Um, and that's kind of basically, I think, almost like a juxtaposition of what my life was like, or where I was headed, the track I was on, and and then uh yeah, and then the light was just, a contrast of that exact opposite. And but now I think of just like a subway, a track, a train on a track. It to me, it kind of represents today just this, like, almost like doing things in your own strength, and being self-reliant, and the rigidness of that, instead of living more intuitively and trusting God with things, trusting, you know, there's angels, there's things around us that are here to help, and not doing things in your own strength. And it was so interesting. Just this morning, I have a grandson, his name's Zion, and this morning, we were sitting at the breakfast table. I just kind of went into my daughter's house for a second to say hi, and they had this book on the table, and so he handed me the book to read it, but I didn't have my glasses on, and so I couldn't really read it. So I was just looking at the pictures and making up a story, and and my daughter and her husband were like correcting me, and they're like, "No, that's not what it's about. It's about staying on track." It was a story of this train and how you need to stay on track. And so the train keeps leaving the track and going on all these adventures and seeing all these things. And they're saying stay on track. And the moral of the book is never leave the track. And I said, this is a terrible book. I'm like, you should never read this to your child. This is a terrible book. And so I was telling my grandson, I'm like, no, you want to get off the track. You do not want to be on the track. And I think it's like, to me, it represents like that the wide road, or like what everybody does, or the easy way. It's just automatic pilot of, like, for me, the easiest thing for me to do is sit on the couch, watch TV, and eat potato chips and drink a beer or something. Like, that's the easiest thing for me to do. But to go and paint, to write a blog, yeah, I'm sure you know this as an artist, as a writer, it's so much like this. There's so much resistance to the things that are beneficial and serving of others, and vulnerable and giving, and all those things, right? Our art, our destiny, what we're meant to do, um, are off the track, and but that track just wants you to, like, you know, do a 9 to 5 and watch TV, and I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, do the
Mm.
typical thing. So
Yeah.
I think because of that book, and just how I think of, like, to me, train tracks are bad. I don't know why I think that, but it's like, what is the rigid way of the world, or something, you know?
What an interesting synchronicity this morning for you to have that experience with your grandson, and
Yeah.
then to be reflecting on the symbolism of the train today. It's really fascinating. I so relate to what you're saying around the resistance. I sometimes think of me attending to my art, what calls me my writing, as an uphill slog. It's like walking uphill through treacle. Like, it's like, come on, do the thing. And
Yeah.
I I find it easier. So my podcasting is an aspect of my art and my expression. However, the main thing I believe I'm here to do, and we'll talk more about purpose and destiny because that was a big feature of your NDE. But I feel like I give that crumbs. I'm trying to write a novel at the moment, and I slogged through creating a little nook for myself to writing. I did it piece by piece. It feels like building a big house with my own hands. But still, I refer to it as giving it crumbs. I might go there and I'll sit and I'll write for an hour, and then, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, like that resistance is so powerful. And that's why I really like and welcome your work, Ellie, which I've only just discovered. And I'm so happy to be sharing it with the audience today, because you offer ways to get through that resistance and to attend to the things that really, truly matter.
Yeah.
Thank you. Uh, so one thing I wanted to talk about, because it's another aspect of your NDE, which really struck me, is that as you're having this experience, and as you said, you feel it in that it happened throughout when you were in the coma. Your mum was having kind of a parallel experience, and her own story was unfolding, and that of, summoning the priest, really deepening into prayer in that moment for a woman that, as you said, this wasn't her default setting to do that. But in that moment, that was what was right and what arose. I wonder if you could reflect on the power of prayer in your experience and what it contributed to your survival, how it
Yeah, I
contributed.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely think it absolutely did. I mean, it's almost like I can feel, I could feel, through that dream, you could almost feel the prayer that would bring you to that light, because I was completely powerless. I wanted to run, I wanted to get out of there, but I couldn't move. And so I didn't even voluntarily walk to the end. I floated involuntarily, basically to the end, to the edge of the cliff. And so I think for my mom, it was just this utter desperation. She was going to lose. And I don't know. My dad's really, they're still married today, and I have a decent relationship with him, but I I've never really heard his story in this. It's almost like he wasn't there, like it was too much for him to deal with, too much emotion. He doesn't do well with like a lot of emotion. And whenever anything gets like heavy or deep, he's, bye-bye. So I don't know. But the whole time in the hospital, it seems like it was just my mom and this priest. So I imagine she doesn't have a husband to console her or tell her, it's going to be okay, or to be strong in it, or to pray or whatever. He wasn't, I don't think, there. And so yeah, she just had this priest come, and she ended up having, going to his church after that, and like having a friendship with his family, and having a relationship. But at the time, he was a stranger. So, I don't know what they prayed or how they prayed or what the prayers were, but I imagine it was, that I would live. I imagine, and they didn't think I would live. And the doctors, didn't give it. And I guess the longer you're in a coma, the less your chances are, or something. And so yeah, I definitely think prayer is very powerful. I've witnessed that many times in my own life, um, for sure.
Mm. A feature of your story as you speak, I'm reflecting on this, that seems to be this idea that life or God, and for me, they are kind of synonyms, responds to our unanswered questions. That it's a response. So your mum had unvoiced, sorry, not unanswered questions, unvoiced questions, unexpressed questions that we may have. And it was similar to you, perhaps when you were 15, you had some unvoiced questions about life, and this experience, extraordinary experience, has been a stamp on your life ever since, was a response. But also there's the idea of timing that strikes me. So in the moment that you remembered the dream, Ellie, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were experiencing this extreme guilt about what you'd done, what you'd put your mum and dad through, especially your mum, and then that's when you remembered what you,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, like coming out of the hospital, and the days after, I was not much of a changed person. There was no like happy, joyful life in me. It was, yeah, just guilt, and I felt really sick, in my body, and just depressed, sick, upset, you know, uh, yeah, and very like isolated and alone, and I didn't know what to say to my parents, and just that. And then yeah, once I remembered the dream, and even today when I retell it, I can feel it again, and so just remembering it and re-encountering that love and acceptance, just like that is really what changed me, and so it's almost like I don't know, like, well, if God loves me that much, then, I'm not such a rotten person, or there's hope for me, or I don't know, and I felt just accepted. So it was like I felt clean, I felt acceptable, I felt um, you know, lovable.
Mm. And oh, that's so moving to me to hear about acceptance and feeling that acceptance, especially as a teenager. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I wondered also about, so you said that obviously this experience has changed you, but as a kid, 15 years old, I wondered how it began to ripple out in your life so that you could see reflected back at you that you were changed by this.
Well, it was, first of all, I was grounded. I couldn't go anywhere. So, so I spent, several months kind of alone, and it was in the beginning of summer. So, there was no school, so I just kind of was alone to myself. And so I read some books. I read some of the, not all of them, but some of the books that my mom was reading, and she and I were kind of discovering God together. And and so it was like the encounter continued. It wasn't like it was a one-time thing, and it was this misty dream, and it began to fade, and it was this powerful force that was drawing me and wooing me and pursuing me and wasn't letting me go. And I was praying, and I was talking to God, and I felt like I could hear God back and in my thoughts, not audibly or anything. And it was like I had a connection. I had a connection with God. And so I tried to read the Bible at the time, and my mom was like, "You should read the Bible. I'm reading the Bible." And I couldn't understand it, and I was just like, I don't know. This feels like gobbledygook to me. I don't understand it. And so I just kind of kept just having this relationship with God through, I don't know, like writing poems and singing, and I could feel joy. I could feel euphoric, feelings. And then it was helpful to read books that other people would interpret, or read the Bible and then interpret it, and I could understand it when they would talk about it. Later on in life, that changed, and I could understand it. But at 15, at that time, I didn't understand it. So, so yeah, I think it just like, and so then so then I hit like this crisis point once school started again, because, um, all of my old friends, were still in this very self-destructive path. And I didn't want to be on that path. And it didn't feel good. The sort of subway filth wasn't really drawing me in anymore. And I didn't want to live that way. And their attitude and the how they talked and everything just didn't feel good to me. So I was sort of like, moving away and getting distance, and then they were sort of like, oh yeah, well, now you're all like religious and you think you're better than everybody. And it's like, no. And so there was a bit of a, and that's a hard thing, when you're kind of one of the cool kids doing all the edgy things, and now you're like seen as this goody two shoes nerd, let's say. And yeah, so it was hard. So I actually went to Greece, and went to high school in Greece right after that, because it's like I didn't have anybody to be friends with, because I didn't really want to be with friends with my old friends. They didn't really want me as a friend, and I was just really struggling in my identity, and like, who am I? And I wasn't strong and secure enough on my own to just confidently walk in it. So I was kind of lost, but not lost, if that makes sense. I knew I found something profound and I didn't want to let go of it, and I wanted to continue unwrapping it. But then my old box I was in, my old track I was on, I was that train, from this morning. I was that train. Um, the funny thing is in the book, the train kept getting in trouble for getting off track, and he would be like dancing with the butterflies. At one time, he was chasing a horse, and he was doing all these like fun adventures. But it's just such a strange book that it was bad to do that, and you're supposed to be on track. So, so yeah, like I didn't want to go back to my old ways, and I was just, off track, or, like that train discovering, but there was nowhere to fit in. So that's why I went to Greece, kind of a new start.
Yeah, you were just fundamentally changed at every level, and this played out in your life. I mean, to think of changing schools for me as a 15-year-old would have been a huge endeavor, and you changed countries. It's just, yeah, massive changes for you, Ellie. So I feel like you were, even though you feel like you were on that one track and there was that conflict between wanting to embrace a new life, I do feel like you were very courageous as a 15-year-old to really be leaning into what the experience invited you to inhabit. So wow. Um, I guess that makes me think too, because thinking about the power of this experience, had you ever had anything spiritual or mystical or strange happen to you before?
No, unlike your childhood, I can't think of anything. I mean, okay, okay, me and my friends played with a Ouija board, and we were convinced it moved, and you do light as a feather, stiff as a board, and all that stuff. But other than that, really nothing. And I didn't grow up with anything. And two sort of mystical encounters, I guess, is one was Santa Claus, because I just was enthralled with the idea that I really believed in Santa Claus when I was a small child. And I was completely captivated by the idea that, Santa Claus knew everything. He knew when we were sleeping. He knew when we were awake. He knew if we were bad or good. And I was always feeling like Santa Claus was watching me, so I better be good, or I'm going to get a lump of coal. And so this sort of omniscient, omnipotent being out there, and he, in one night, he could deliver all the children on Earth, their toys. I I just thought, wow, So that was like, to me, Santa was like God. And so of course when I found out he wasn't real, I was devastated. And it just made me, I don't know, like lose trust, I think, in my parents. And uh so I never told my kids Santa Claus was real, because it was just such a harmful experience for me. And then the next thing is I read the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe when I was, what, fourth grade or whatever, and um, that really impacted me. I mean, when Aslan was on the table and they shaved him, and, the whole story, I just bawled my eyes out when, Aslan was on the table. And I think I've read it as an adult, and so I understand it a lot more now. But when I was a kid, I still somehow captured the deep meaning of it
Mhm.
somehow. And so that was another very interesting, powerful, um, yeah, looking back encounter, I think, with God. But at the time I didn't know that.
I really relate to what you're saying. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was a seminal book for me as well. And I think for a lot of us, and especially of our generation, I'm the same age as you, and it's an extraordinary work. And also the Ouija board, playing with that, and like we all had those experiences, and they do crack us open a little bit to think, what's going on here? It's kind of a rite
Yeah.
of passage, the Ouija board, an interesting thing. But Ellie, I also read on your website you mentioned, just there's a brief mention in your bio section about an experience you had in high school where you feel that your right brain was opened, and that paved the way for more creative expression. I wondered if you could share what happened and whether that was before or after the experience.
No, it was after. So
Okay.
as I was in this you know, uh, sort of pursue this relationship with God. This was like right before I went to Greece, as I was struggling, with the school scene. I, took this art class. Well, meanwhile, I had been like praying and asking God. I had this sense that I was saved for a reason. I'm living today for a reason. And I believed it was a miracle too. And my mom said it all the time, so I was like, wow, like maybe I'm going to do something great. Maybe I'll do something big with my life. So I was searching even at that point, what could that be? And you're sitting here in high school and you're like, hey, I'm decent at math and well, I'm all right at history and I'm pretty good at, English, but I'm not really great at anything. So how can I live a life of greatness? This is just how I was thinking at 15, right? How can I live a life of greatness if I'm not really great at anything? So I asked God, if you make me great at something, I will spend the rest of my days doing it for you. And that was just my sense of destiny or purpose back then. And so uh, not long after, within a week or two, I'm in this art class, and I was never like, I was indifferent about art class. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was just art class. And Betty Edwards, I went to a private school and they had this big endowment for art. So they got Betty Edwards. She had just come out with her book not too long before that, Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain. And so she came out to our school and she was doing like a workshop on that. And so it's like crazy to me to think that Betty Edwards herself like cracked open my right brain. And so she takes you through all these right brain exercises. And I, was doing all of them and, with everybody else in the class. And by the end of it, it was like a 3-day workshop. By the end of it, I could draw. And before that, it was like stick figures. And I mean, I couldn't draw at all. And then I could draw like what my eye saw. And I mean, I've looked back on the drawings and they're not like fantastic, but compared to stick figures, they were elevated like, 100 steps. So I came home and I showed my mom the drawings, and she was like, "You didn't draw that." And I said, "Yeah, I did. Yeah." And I right brain, and she's like, "No, no, you didn't draw that." And so she goes, okay, if you drew that, then draw this. And she ripped out a portrait of this man out of the magazine, and she said, go to your room and draw that for me. So I went to my room and I drew it, and I came back and I handed it to her, and she was just like, oh my gosh, you can draw. You're amazing. You're an artist. You're so talented. And um, so anyway, yeah, I picked up painting and I started painting. So my very first painting, I wanted to give it to my dad for his birthday, and and my dad's very intimidating, and he was the kind of guy that could like make your whole world whole with his words, or he could just devastate you. So he was very very powerful to me at that time. And so I was super nervous, and it was a really big painting. It was like a 30 by 40 inches. So it was really big. And it was of these two women. I actually have a whole video on this on my YouTube, because I recreated my first painting and compared them. So that's what the YouTube's about. But anyway, I wanted to give it to him, but I was so nervous, and I heard him coming. His car was parked. He's walking up the steps. I can hear his keys, and I'm just like, my heart is in my throat. I'm just so nervous. I'm thinking maybe chickening out and not giving it to him, because I just couldn't bear the thought of him laughing at me, or telling me it was terrible or anything like that. So I was just so nervous. And so he came up and I said, hey, I have a birthday present for you. I made you a painting. And I turned it around and showed it to him. And his jaw just dropped, and his eyes got, really wide, and he was just staring at it. And I could see his eyes were like welling up with tears. And for my dad, my macho Greek dad, to cry is like, I think I only saw him cry like twice in my life. And so I just couldn't believe it. So he grabbed the painting. He was all like embarrassed, and he took it upstairs to his room and disappeared. Didn't say anything, but I could tell by his reaction that it meant something to him. It did something. And I literally saw the power of art right there, that it something about it gripped him. And so I just went into my room. I threw myself down on my bed and just bawled my eyes out. And um, yeah, and that was it. And I just told God, I want to do that for the rest of my life, because it was like the power of art to just really emotionally touch somebody like that was, and I could see the connection too of, it's beyond human. It's something you can't put words to. You know, reading the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and a whole generation being profoundly affected by that. That's beyond C.S. Lewis. That's beyond a human's capability. You know, that's the muse working through him. That there's something so powerful about art in all its forms. And and so I think, you know, it was my way of grasping and getting a hold of God, and being you know, a vessel, or being used by God in some way, some capacity, and that flowing through me was so attractive to me. And yeah, so that was like it's all connected in my opinion.
Mm. And it's lovely that the art that you created in that moment was like kind of a language that you formed between you and your dad, and you'd struggled before, perhaps, as you shared. So that's so beautiful. I love what you say there around art and the power of art. It's yeah, very powerful indeed. And so that's so interesting, because I was wondering if you'd ever picked up a paintbrush before your experience, and it's wow. And we're looking at one of your works behind you. What's that one called, Ellie? Just to give context.
I think it's called Majestic Menagerie.
It's absolutely stunning. So to
Hmm.
think that you were someone who didn't have that vocation as a kid, and then it seems that this experience happened, and suddenly, you know, through various avenues, this capacity's opened up in you. I just find it
Yeah.
intriguing. And it leads me to ask, because in your video, and today you refer to the experience as a dream, but it has all the hallmarks of an NDE. Do you now feel that it is a near-death experience that happened to you? And when did you make that link?
Yeah, uh, on in as soon as I remembered it,
Okay.
because you know, you hear about the light at the end of the tunnel. So it was like, as soon as I was like, oh my gosh, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, you know. So, but you know, it didn't feel like an out of body experience. It didn't feel like, I mean, I've heard other stories that seem, you know, different. So, and it felt like a dream rather than an out of body experience, or something that was, it seemed like a very real dream. Like, I've had dreams that real, but and I don't know where the lines are there. I don't understand it. I mean, I've heard of people that, you know, I listen to this podcast that I really love, and this guy talks about, you know, he'll dream at night. It's like he's dreaming, but then, you know, he's actually going somewhere, you know, and really experiencing something. And he'll even come back and have like, you know, maybe he was in a place where there was sand or a desert or something, and he'll come back and have like sand, you know, on him. And like, he tells pretty crazy stories. So, I don't, it's possible. Like, I believe it, sure.
Mm.
And so I don't know what's a dream and what isn't a dream, and what's real and what's not. And, but to me, it kind of doesn't matter. It was just, you know, I know I encountered God for sure.
You're right. The label doesn't matter, and it's, you know, the experience speaks for itself in the ways that it's played out in your life and changed your life and the lives of the people around you too. And In your blog, which I was reading, which is as a writer, I love watching the YouTube, but also reading the blog. And you write really beautifully, and you talk about how God gave you life, purpose, and destiny. I just wrote it down here. I was wondering if you could. So it's a really powerful statement: life, purpose, and a destiny. And I was wondering if you could share more about how each played out in your life as the years progressed. And yeah, purpose, so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think God gave me life is really obvious, in that I'm born, I'm here. I've lived through the fact that I even lived through in my, teenage years is a miracle, but also that experience. And and I do believe that, darkness or whatever you want to call it had an assignment to and I was in agreement with it. I was in agreement with it daily, that it had an assignment against me. And I believe for everyone, not just me, but every human being, that we all have a purpose and a destiny. And the enemy of our soul sees what it is, and knows the mantle we wear, knows what our purpose is, and sets out to if not kill us, disarm us, and keep us from ever fulfilling our destiny through pain, through trauma, through hurts. And so, if your superpower, I know my superpower is to make people feel like they have significance, they have purpose. I mean, my whole art school, everything I do, every painting I make tells the story that everybody has a purpose. Everybody's life is significant and important. We're all worthy. And if I look back at every pain I've ever felt in my life, it has been that I have no significance. I'm unimportant. I'm not worthy. And so uh, I feel like that's sort of how everybody um, navigates through life, right? And so, and then I think I cried out for purpose. I wanted purpose. I wanted destiny. I wanted my life to count. And because I had experienced so much pain of feeling like I wasn't significant, I wasn't important. And so this was my chance. And God was saying, you're so important to me. I saved you. You're so important to me. I love you. I'm the creator of all things in the universe. And I love you. You felt my love. So that's the ultimate statement of purpose and significance and destiny. So then it's like, okay, what are we doing then? We're together now. What are we doing? What's the plan? What's the adventure? What am I here for? And so um and I think it's the hero's journey. You find the elixir and you bring it back for the people. Um so I feel like art has given me a vehicle to help others see that they have purpose, they have destiny, and they also have a superpower. And for some, it might be the greatest pain they've ever felt is rejection, and their superpower is to make others feel accepted. And um, so I didn't know. I thought my purpose was art, when I at 15, when I saw I could draw and I saw that I could touch my dad. It was like, okay, that's my purpose, is I'm going to be an artist and touch people. But that's basically where it stopped then. But as I've grown and developed as an adult, and even today it unravels more and more. But um, it's turned into something deeper and more powerful. And and yeah, and I don't think I'm special in that. I believe everybody has purpose and destiny and a life, a unique life to live.
Thank you. Yes, and I so agree with what you're saying, and I also resonate with this idea of helping or wanting others to feel significant. And I think that's because I too struggled with that. And sometimes I think, I manifested a little 4'11" body because I just wanted to be as tiny as possible and just slip under the radar. But, uh, you know, maybe there are other plans for me. But I think there's an interesting dynamic too between being proactive and surrendering that I hear in your account too, Ellie, because you did ask to be shown the purpose. So there's a interesting, I don't know, like a paradox there in a way, isn't
Yeah.
there? Which I find fascinating. But you talked about your experience continuing to unfold and show you things. Am I right in thinking that you've only just recently linked the why you paint this beautiful light, and
Yeah.
hopefully we can share some images of your art on social media, and I'll share links, because this light is apparent, and there are so many gorgeous underwater scenes that you paint as well. But
I know.
yeah, so but you
And
only,
I never
yeah,
connected the dots. I know. It
what,
seems silly. It's almost like um I don't know. I don't know why I didn't see it. It seems silly to me now. It seems so obvious. But literally just a few months ago, it is brand new. And it just hit me all of a sudden that like, wow, that is why I paint light. And um yeah, and I always have, like since the very beginning. I've gotten better at it. I mean, I tried though when I was younger, to capture it. It's always even when I went to art school and college, I was always painting light. And so yeah, that's just such a cool connection. I know it sounds kind of dumb, like, well, okay, you just now kind of figured that out, but it's like, yeah, I did. I just now figured it out. And then like, yeah, after that, I had been doing all these turtles. So it was all these like underwater with glistening light and like marigolds that are lit up and that sort of suspended floating feeling. And I can really trace it back to a lot of art, that has that in there. And I tell our students that all the time. You can't help it. You are painting your story whether you realize it or not. And then I'm just like a complete living example of that. Um, so yeah, it's pretty funny. And the other thing I connected recently because I went to Greece. My husband and I went on a vacation to Crete and with some friends. And I've been to Crete a few times. And there's this one spot I love going to. I love it. And uh, it has all these rocks and cliffs and all these little areas you can go up and stand on the cliffs. And there's this amazing crystal clear, beautiful water that you can jump into. And when I was just there, I'd never connected why I love that place so much. It's probably one of my favorite places on earth. And just when we were just there with some friends, I was looking at it and I was like, this is like my dream. I mean, and the dream is a little bit better, but super close, like really, really close. And I just thought, wow, like that's pretty incredible. It makes sense that it's my favorite place.
it's like yeah, the NDE was prescient in that sense and connecting you to your heritage as well, which, wow,
Yeah.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
Um, so I just wanted to share in my life, there's a deep connection between creativity and healing. And many years ago, I received these words, "Heal with your pen," in a meditation, and I'm sort of living into the various layers of that now. I wondered what sort of message or words you'd like to share around the connection between expressing your creativity and healing your life.
Yeah. So many things. I mean, I think first of all, I think Elizabeth Gilbert writes about this too. Like, I think when you engage with, the muse or God or, whatever you want to call it, um, I believe when you're in your right brain, whatever that means either, just I would just say that mode of creating because all of a sudden words don't matter anymore. you're at least when you're painting. I imagine when you're writing, but I write too. And when I left brain write, or in my own mind I'm writing, I struggle. I really struggle. And then you hit that flow where you feel like you're probably not even writing this. You're just writing. And then you read back what you wrote and you're like, wow, that really, that's good. I don't think that was me though. And so it's the same thing with art. And maybe a little easier with art, at least for me, because in writing you have the words that hang you up. And if you can't find the right word, then I'm back thinking again, and I get out of it. But with painting, once you're in and you're in deep. That sort of la la land of right brain world. And I think that's where you really encounter God. I mean, it is such not the only place you encounter God, obviously, but whenever you're there, I think it's kind of an exclusive place to encounter. Like, I can't imagine, because I talk to a lot of artists, I can't imagine. Everybody basically says the same thing. It's very euphoric. You've lost a sense of your ego and yourself. You're not you self-doubt goes away. All of your fears and inadequacies. So the longer you spend time in that space where anything is possible and you're just flowing, co-creating with God, it's like recalibrating. It's like a tuning fork, and you've come back to your true self. And I think that's extremely healing. And so many times with art and with painting, artists will, hit a block, and there's all this resistance. And I think that's when you're gonna go kind of up a level, or there's something in you that has to die. There's something, and that's a healing process. There's something in you that needs to be left behind. And the way I describe it is like you've gone through, the event horizon, and there's no turning back. You're just like you got sucked into that black hole of change, and once you've crossed over, you've shed that. Could be a bad habit, it could be a mindset, a stronghold in your mind. It could be unforgiveness. It could be, there's so many things it could be. Sometimes I can't even put words to it. I just know something left. And then you have this breakthrough, but there's this like resistance that happens, and you kind of struggle and fight. And like you said, you have to kind of
Mm.
surrender and paint anyway, write anyway. And it doesn't matter if it's crud, and you make a bad painting or you write something bad. You just have to do it anyway. And then that breakthrough happens. And that's when you've gone through that sort of event horizon, and there's no turning back. Like you're forever changed. And it's these little micro, things in an artist's life. I tell artists all the time, like, I feel sorry for dentists. Like, I know they don't experience this. I know, a dentist is not going to work, working on teeth and going through the event horizon. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah, so it's like it's such a privilege to get to be in the creative field, because you're really like putting your heart on the line. You're being vulnerable, you're raw, you're open, you are you're living in a way, you're exposing yourself in a way that is so vulnerable and so different than anything else. I think only artists can, and I think anybody can be an artist. I'm not one of those, people that thinks like, oh, only these special people are artists. It's like anybody who's willing to move into it and be vulnerable and be open. And you even see it with brand new artists that just start painting. The first thing they're worried about, they get all nervous and worried. They don't even like to take an art class in front of other people. It's like, I'm going to make a bad painting in front of everybody. And it's like their ego is so wrapped up in whatever they're doing. And it's hard for them to just play and be a child and just experience paint and just whatever, and not necessarily care about the results, but suspend themselves in the process. And it's that child's like heart, I think, that brings the healing, that invites the healing, that allows it. And it's like our adult, logical, ego self that fights it and resists it, and is really the enemy of growth and personal growth. And I mean, of course, you have to be an adult sometimes, but uh, yeah, I think so much of art is very healing, and the creative process for sure. And then
Mm.
I think it's transferred into the work, and it's in your words, it's in the music, it's embedded in that clay. It's hidden in every brushstroke. It's encoded in there. That's why when people see art and it makes them cry, they don't know what's touching them, but it is. It's bypassing their mind and their intellect, and it's going right to their gut, right to their spirit, and is is speaking and working and moving and finessing, and it's gripping them, and they know it, they're experiencing it, and so they don't know what else to do but cry. And they're not sad, they're moved, they're inspired, they found wonder, they found awe. um yeah, you can read a book that's written beautifully and cry because of how beautifully it's written, or how touching it is, or it just got you and you can't even put words to it. It's like, I don't know why I'm crying, but it just got me. um yeah, and that's a powerful thing. So I think for artists, writers, musicians, whoever you are, even chefs, like if you're vulnerable and you are yourself going through that creative process of that resistance, and then do it anyway and break through, and this thing in me's got to die so I can live, that whole process of the creative process, that's what brings that power, that encoding, that magic to the brushstrokes, to the music, to those things that moves people. I think for artists, that because you can look at art and it's like, hmm, okay, and it doesn't move anybody. I think that art is like, it's made here, it's made in the intellect, it's made from the ego, and maybe it's like interesting. Wow, that's interesting. I like that. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the kind of thing that grips people and changes the world.
Mm. Like the experience you had as a kid when you presented that art to your dad and he cried, and you realized you moved him in that way. Yeah, I love what you share around just doing it anyway as well. Like just do it anyway. And through through trying to bypass or get off that track, that one track mind, so taking those steps to get off it, we might eventually, we will eventually, God willing, reach that place of surrender into that greater force. I love what you say, and I'm going to take that on board, and I'm sure that's going to help so many of our listeners today, or people watching who might feel like there's that creativity stifled in them. Thank you, Ellie. Well, we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I wanted to ask you, looking back on your NDE all these years later, is there anything that stands out like the most? What was its most valuable gift to you?
I mean, I just keep saying it. It's that love, and it's unforgettable. And then when you find it again, it could be something so simple as, like, I just call them kisses from heaven. Um, so it's like when you know God kissed you that day, and left something for you, showed you something. Um, you know, any kind of enlightenment or revelation. Um, and I think when we ask for it, it doesn't always come immediately, but something powerful, something beautiful, God's a poet, and he'll put these amazing serendipities in place, that if you're aware and you know that love, then it's like you get a little dose of it, or a vitamin of it, and sometimes it makes me cry. Sometimes I just, you just have that moment of, like, that was a kiss from heaven. And uh so I think just the most lasting, deepest part that's still with me today is that love. And it's almost like that dream, and just living in that water, being in that water, was this just like ultimate. envelopment, uh, through and through. Every part of my being was doused in that. There was not one single part of me that didn't experience it or didn't uh, become at one with it or something like that. And uh, and so when a kiss comes, when there's a little mini encounter, it's like it connects again with that. So it's like an easy way for me to recognize God. Even it could just even be like an older woman looking at you and she smiles. You can see the light in her smile. I know other people see it too and know what I'm talking about. You probably know what I'm talking about.
Mm.
Um, but it's when there's that recognition, your spirit connects with the spirit of God and whatever's going on, you get it, you understand it. So I feel like if I didn't experience that love, if I didn't have that dream, if that didn't happen to me, I don't know that I would know that today. And I can't imagine that. I just can't imagine that.
Thank you so much, Ellie. What a joy to speak with you today. Where can our audience find out more about you?
Yeah, just on social media. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, uh, did I say YouTube? Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, all the usual suspects. And Elli Milan, just ELLIMILAN. I have a website, same thing, ellimilan.com. And then I own an art school, Milan Art Institute, and I teach artists all over the world. My daughter also teaches. I'm in business with my husband and my son-in-law, and so it's a family business. And we have coaches and mentors that work with us and work with the artists and the students. And our main mission is to help artists be able to make a living with their art because that's how they'll make the most impact. That's how their life will be the most significant, is being able to do it full time. Trying to balance a job that you're not passionate about, that you're just doing because you have to pay the bills, drains you from your passion and what you love, and really how God's using you and how you can serve the world and how you can leave your mark on the world and how you can do the things we were just talking about, and have your whole story left in those brushstrokes that's going to affect other people and really change the world. You really have to do it as a profession, or at least as a full-time gig. You don't have to sell it or necessarily, I suppose, but I just feel like that's the best way, the best vehicle for people to be able to live out their purpose and destiny as an artist, is to actually be able to make a full-time living from it to support their family. It makes you more professional. I'm sure you know this as a writer, and better at what you do. Show up, right? If there's the pressure of earning money to pay the bills. So that's why our school focuses so much on that, of creating an art business, because a lot of artists think like they'll write on YouTube and I'll hear them, oh, making it a business just makes it dirty, just makes it not real art anymore. And it's like, no, that's what makes it real art. Because if you can't sell it, if it's not a profession, if it's not something you're doing on a professional level, showing up every day, even when you don't feel like it, that's when the magic happens. I know you know that as a writer. Like
Yeah.
the greatest moments every artist faces is the day they didn't want to go show up to their studio. So,
So true.
but
So true.
if you're not a professional, you don't have to show up, and you won't show up. So,
Mm.
um, so yeah, I know you asked where to find me, and I went on to a whole new tangent,
No,
but
I love it.
yeah,
Love it.
um, I'm really passionate about helping other artists. So I'm more passionate about that than my own art, for sure.
Well, it's an extraordinary mission, and it's a gift to all of us today. I'm going to close with a question that I'm asking all of my guests in this new relaunched phase of Spirit Sisters. And the question is, what can an encounter with spirit teach us about being fully alive?
Wow, you asked a very deep question. Um, what can an encounter with spirit um, how can that make us feel more alive?
Yes, and live more fulfilled lives while we're in our flesh suits and while we're walking 2 feet on the earth.
I mean, it's got to be purpose, because if we can recognize and humble ourselves enough to say, "Wow, there's something bigger than me out there. There's something, a family, an extended family to be a part of." Spirit sisters. It's not just me, but there's a collective here. There's the family of God. We're all connected and united in our spirit. Um, that gives you a lot to want to live for. And it provokes questions like, okay, now what? And why? And what? And where? And who? And then you start to become more intentional about everything. Your time. Do I really want to spend my time on that? Do I really want to just sit around and do nothing with my time? Do I really want to hang out with that person? Is that person meant for, are we really meant to fashion life together. And 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 so you begin to look at everything differently, and I think your life becomes a lot more intentional and purposeful and important, and you don't take as much for granted, and every minute counts and every day counts. And so yeah, it's a huge gift, I think, a huge gift. And to know that you're connected and you're not alone, you're not an orphan, you're not weird, you're not the only one, you're not some outcast, you're not the rejected one. You belong, and you're a part of something that's profound and great and eternal. And I think those are all beautiful, amazing things to live for sure.
That is the most wonderfully in-depth answer. I couldn't have hoped for more, and what a beautiful note to end our conversation on today. Elli, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for coming on Spirit Sisters, for being with the family today.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, and thank you very much. Yeah, it's an honor.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Sisters. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. And don't forget to rate and review the show. Have an experience you'd like to share with me? Get in touch at my website, karinamachado.com, or find me on Facebook at Karina Machado Author. After all, there's nothing more powerful than a story.